shouting out to you guys.
Actually, I think the best way would be just free flow. So if you have a mic, just unmute yourself. You can press Control D to unmute yourself. And if you do not have a mic, post them to the chat and I will read it out. We do encourage you though to unmute yourself if you're able to do that. Um, so again, just press Control D to unmute and feel free to start speaking, and then I'll come in and read the chat when everyone's done.
Okay, Dustin, can I go ahead and start so I can model?
Do what now?
I'm going to go ahead and start. This is Kim Bennett.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, welcome guys. So happy you're here. I'm Kim Bennett. I'm the director of Coastal GLRS at First District RESA. And on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm actually a 10 at this very moment. I'm so excited to be delivering information to you about restorative practices and how that would look in your classroom, but more importantly, how that would look for you in your remote learning that you're doing right now. And I am a trained facilitator, so that's very exciting. The next part one is, what is the hardest thing that I've had to deal with? Basically just I'm an overthinker and I'm a big picture person, and so trying to think about down the road and how everything is going to work. Everybody is doing something in most districts. You have different things people are learning and growing, and they always say this is unprecedented, and we're seeing that. So nobody has real answers, but trying to combine it and just be just be mentally okay with that. And I say that personally because I'm thinking more so on the part of my family. What is this going to look like? I'm from Texas originally, and I have tons of family in Texas and Tennessee. And so not being able to be around my family and my son who lives in Savannah, but he can't come see me because he has to work, and just a lot going on there. But just being here with my husband, and it's been really challenging. And yes, I've had meltdowns. The last part, self-care, honestly, I tried to do a exercise regimen that didn't work out too well for me. So now I'm just intentionally making myself walk at least 10 to 30 minutes a day just to get some breaks from that. So as we go, I'm going to let Dustin, turn this over to Dustin and let him actually go from there.
Okay, so if you're going to speak over the mic, go ahead and you can unmute yourself and let us know.
Good morning. This is Leslie Popple. I'm the assistant principal at Todd Grant Elementary School. I am probably a 9 this morning, feeling pretty good, had my coffee. The hardest part for me personally since the shutdown is not interacting with my students at school and the staff. I'm a people person and I like to be around people. And as far as things I'm doing for myself, I try to get up and walk around as much as I can throughout the day because I can get stuck here at my computer. And I have started doing some things with flowers outside that I have not done before. So interesting. Have a great day.
Thank you, Leslie. Anyone else?
I am.
Hi.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Francine Randolph. I'm a paraprofessional at Butler Elementary School here in Savannah, Chatham County. I think I'm about a 9 right now. I'm excited. The hardest thing that I miss about not being at school is my students as well and the staff. I am also a people person and I love interacting with everyone. But as far as me sitting here at the computer day by day, I do a 30-minute regimen exercise every day. And I'm also keeping my grandbaby while she's out of her daycare. So that keeps me pretty busy. And nice to meet everybody. And thank you.
Thank you.
I am Eric Tinsley, and I'm with Scrivener County Middle School. I'm a 7th grade science teacher. And I am probably, the hardest thing for me is, again, not being at work. I miss my students, and also the uncertainty of everything in the future for what's going on with education and this COVID-19. And I keep myself busy. I'm on a scale of 1 to 10. I probably am a 9 today. And also my regiment is I get out the house. I love the garden, so I go out in my garden and outside and do yard work, and and we also have land. So when I get frustrated where I think I need some room, I just go out and walk through the woods. And nice to meet everyone, and you guys stay safe.
Thank you, Eric.
Anyone else?
Hey,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, Calvin. Sorry.
Well, no, I don't want to interrupt anybody. I'm still trying to figure this out. Can anybody see me? I turned my camera on.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I don't know you, but my name is Calvin Bone. I'm currently with the Glenn County School System. Looks like I'm finishing up my 17th year with them this year. For the past 4 years, I've been a full-time restorative practices facilitator, behavior specialist, coordinated early intervention specialist. Been doing it all, going in and out of every classroom, working with full classrooms, teaching community building lessons, working and training teachers on how to do restorative practices and run circles in their classrooms, doing restorative conferencing, just doing everything that restorative practices has to offer. And in the process, I have everything that I've done, I've actually turned into written documents, curricula, volumes. And so now my partner, Miss Anne Marie Jones, and we are going to go out and take what we're doing public and try to benefit as many schools and classrooms as we possibly can. On a scale of 1 to 10, you can probably tell by the sound of my voice, I'm pretty much a 10 all the time. Even on bad days, I can still maintain a 10. And what have I been doing to keep myself up? Playing with my grandbaby girl. She's 18 months old. She lives right next door, so she's with me every day. I kept her all night last night, been playing with her this morning until it was time to do this. So y'all be blessed, and I'm excited about being with you this week.
Nice to meet you, Kelvin.
Good morning.
Anyone else?
Good morning. My name is Amy Best, and I am a school psychologist in Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say that this morning I am about an 8. I have not had my coffee yet, so that would certainly take me to a 10. As far as self-care and what I am doing for myself, I am doing a lot of exercising. I'm taking brain breaks because sitting at the computer all day is exhausting to me. My dog is certainly sick of walks. As a matter of fact, she refused for the first time yesterday. And I am trying to eat healthier. It just makes me feel better. I look forward to the session.
Hey there, this is Tara Port. Right now, I too am an 8 because I am pre-coffee. So, Amy, I feel you on that. The hardest part, I think, right now for me is not having a commute to decompress from the day. So that I realized was like a built-in opportunity for me to kind of let go of the things that were happening and process and self-reflect. And the fact that I don't have that natural barrier between the two, home life and school life, I find that I'm struggling with that a little bit. The ways that I kind of have self-care and treat myself is I use TikTok because it's fun, let's be honest. And we play music in the house all the time. And we have our hammock set up outside and our Confederate jasmine is blooming. So that's a really nice opportunity to kind of get away. So good morning, everybody. I miss all my Savannah Chatham folks. So it's nice to see a lot of friendly names in the chat.
Yes. Thank you, Tara. And thank you, Amy.
Anyone else over the mic?
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Rosangela Perez. I work at the Richmond Hill High School in here in Bryan County. Yeah, hi. Well, this morning I'm feeling like a 10. I wake up, my kids are ready to do their e-learning, so I'm happy for that. That's a plus that they are awake very early in the morning. The hardest thing that I feel is like I'm a paraprofessional in inclusion, so I'm always running around the school. So the hardest thing for me is non being active running around all the high school. The high school is big, so I'm always running around. So it's very hard for me not being active around with my students and seeing them, being with them. I'm very like into them. We talk every single time, and not knowing what is happening with them at home, not not being like, Miss Perez, I'm feeling like this today. I'm having this situation at home, and not seeing them and not being aware like um what they're like passing through in the at the home or something. If they're like having their parents over there or something, that's comes into my mind constantly, how he's doing, or how can I help him, or that situation comes to my mind. But I just like think like, okay, I'm sending an email. I'm just like, is they just like answer to me, I'm like, okay, he's doing it. So that's how I try to think positive about that. And the things that I do to maintain myself positive and everything, I do TikToks with my kids. I have 3 kids, so they have put me into it. TikToks, and I go outside and maintain myself active.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for all your hard work.
No, thank you. The same for you guys, everything.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi,
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Crystal, and I'm a teacher in Long County, at
Woo.
County Middle School. Um, the this morning, I would say I'm a 9. I have my last week of coursework at GSU for this semester. So I'm kind of busy getting those things done and turned in on time. But the hardest thing for me has been missing my daily routine. I'm an introvert, so I don't necessarily mind the seclusion, but I do miss just seeing the people that I normally see each morning. My team is an excellent team, and I really do miss working with them. And just knowing that some of them may be going to other teams next year is kind of saddening to me. So to take care of myself, my daughters and I have been walking daily. Um, and cooking has helped, preparing meals at home, getting them to help, and just kind of staying focused on the positive.
Great. Thank you. Nice to hear your voice, Crystal. I see your name quite often.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm gonna go ahead and read some of the chat if we don't have anyone.
Okay.
Okay. We got Carl Pollux, Fed teacher. He's 9. Not being able to go to the gym and work out is a problem. Be active around the home for and work out there. So he's been doing. Felicia Jackson, high school counselor. She's a 7. Hardest part of the shutdown, not seeing my students, especially my seniors, for closure. Candace Mobley, I would say a 6. The hardest part has been knowing that some of my students are getting no education at home at this time. For myself, I've been taking this time to spend time with my husband and do things together around our house that we've been wanting to do for a while. So Mika, sorry if I said your name wrong. So Mika Gibbs, parapro at Todd Grant, on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm a 10. Patrice Brown, school counselor, and I'm feeling a 6 today. Pamela Hall, I'm a media specialist. I'm a 10 this morning. The hardest part has been not seeing and talking to the children. I love interacting with them and reading stories to them. I walk a few times a week to promote self-care, and I'm much happier after my walk. Jessica, school counselor, 7, been spending time outside with family and yoga. Hardest part of the shutdown is not getting to see the students and learning how to stay connected to students and their families virtually. I'm about a 6 right now, Mary nodding. I'm 2 miss the gym as that brings the most stress relief. It's meditative for me. I miss not connecting with students. I watch inspirational videos and go out in nature. Jacqueline Watson, ELA teacher. Today I'm at a 10, very optimistic about life. Hardest part, not being able to physically spend time with loved ones, and also emotional heaviness when thinking about the current state of the world. Self-care, praying and meditating for an hour a day, working out, eating healthy, spending time with my husband, and Zoom happy hours with my best friends. Carrie Hunter, special education in a self-contained classroom at CGCA. I'm a 6 today. I haven't had my coffee yet. The hardest part has been being away from people. I miss my school friends and my family and friends. I also miss hugs. The things I have been doing for myself is writing letters to people I care about and mailing them. It helps me feel more connected. Kelly Otwell, lead special education teacher, 7-8 today. Missing my sister as a nurse and not knowing when I can see her, as well as missing making sure my students are okay, trying to get outside each day as self-care. Marquise Jones, school counselor, 10. The hardest part has been coming up with meals that I will take the time to prepare to promote self-care, exercise, and find interesting things to cook. I do miss the kids and the staff. So Mika added a little bit more. Parapro from Todd Grant from 1 to 10. I'm 10. The hardest thing for me is trying to work with my own children to get them to work or let me work at home. I feel you there. My 1-year-old is in my lap now. For self-care, I take a nap with the baby. My baby doesn't nap, Samika, so it's just a constant battle there. But Demetia Hubbard, coordinator, Cedarwood Gnet States First Site. I'm about a 9 this morning. The hardest part is worrying about my students' access to meals and their safety. I am also concerned about my staff and possible furlough days next school year. Self-care made a garden with my 5-year-old and taking walks with my husband. Terwana Ferguson, again, forgive me if I say your name wrong. I teach AP Language and 10th grade English at Bradwell Institute. I'm a 7 right now. The distance has been hard, but making the best of it. Myra Gist, again. I teach biology at McIntosh County Academy. I'm a 9 today and maintain that by working out in the morning and listening to music. The most difficult ways about the crisis is figuring out ways to engage my students and maintain motivation in high school students. I'm here, but I'm fixing my breakfast because I just finished my workout. Peace and blessings all. TikTok is awesome. Kara, Francine, Randolph, Karen Ledford. I teach kindergarten at Todd Grant. I'm a 9. I'm home with my teenager from college and husband. We exercise daily. That's all I got.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys so much. That is incredible. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your concerns as well. I heard a lot of good stuff going on, but the arching theme is that, we are all struggling and pretty much in the same way. It is extremely hard. And sometimes I think it's harder for teachers because we are used to being with a large crowd of people all the time, and then you go from that to just a small crowd, and even like myself, where you're just by yourself all day literally. And so it is very challenging, but like they keep saying, we're all in this together. So as we go through today, what I'd like for you to do is to please interact through the chat box, and also I'll give opportunities to stop and answer any questions that you might have. But the biggest thing is sharing the things that you are actually doing, and some really great tips that you found have been beneficial. Because one of the things that is vitally important to what we do is building relationships and being resilient in this time and helping our students handle their emotions. We're pretty good about that for the most part, but our students are not. And being that adult that just sees them and says that it's okay, we got this, and connecting with them on a different level to help them, have strategies for the rest of their life, and showing them some of these things. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to present my screen again, and we will go from there. All right, so what is restorative practices? It is an emerging social science that studies how to strengthen relationships between individuals as well as connections between communities. And again, this is about building communities, building strong relationships, and making everything kind of blend together and mesh together. Restorative practices actually was derived from the development of restorative justice. And so restorative justice is more of a formal type way to work within in a situation or a conflict where you have a facilitator and you go through a series of questions. You work with the person that was harmed as well as the one who harmed the person or the individual or the groups of people, and how that goes together. So as the restorative justice was somewhat put in place, they actually decided that, you know, we need to do more proactive type, puts a more proactive type ways to be able to work with the students before they do come to this point. And that is, in a nutshell, what restorative practices is. I will tell you that there is a lot on the internet about it, but the biggest thing for you is thinking about how to work this with the people that you're around, your community. It works with your families, it works with your coworkers, and then of course your students. But you have to really think about the questioning, and this is key. All right, so building stronger communities. When we talk about that, again, it goes, restorative practice operates on the premise that you can't restore something that wasn't built. So again, this is very proactive. 80% of it is building the community, and then of course 20% is restoring the community when there is harm. Here's the restorative practices continuum. And what I'm going to do is going to take a minute to go through each part of this and how that works. Of course, it goes from informal to formal, which with the formal conferences are more restorative justice. And then you have affective statements, affective questioning, small impromptu conversations, your circle, and then your formal conferences. So we're actually going to start with the affective statements. I want to preface this by saying that this is not normal for us. This is not normal language for us, and it does take practice. When you are talking to your kids or your husband, I would highly, or your significant other, I would highly recommend that before you go into using these affective statements, that you practice them, because it's not going to be a natural way for you to talk. So you're using I feel, when, because, or I would like. And so they're basically genuine statements delivered in a respectful manner about how you feel about specific behavior, positive or negative. Even, it doesn't matter either way, but you are always using the I statement, because one of the things that I know that we know is that whenever we are having a conversation or we feel, a certain type of way, we never can put that off on somebody else. It has to be something that we feel, and that we are conveying that information to the person, so that we're not somewhat attacking that person. So for an example, it would be like, I feel like that extremely bothered me when blank, blank, blank happened, instead of saying, you totally didn't put the meat on for supper, and I'm so mad. So it's just about changing your language. It gives others the necessary information to increase the positive behavior and decrease and make amends for negative behavior. So we start with ourselves as models and presenting, kind of like I did in this restorative piece when we started with our circle, which we'll talk about a little bit in a little bit later. But just being able to present that and model what you want to see. Quick story. My son, ever since he was little, fortunately back in the early 90s, I was able to be a facilitator for a curriculum called Survival Skills for Women, and then they had one for men, and then youth. But anyway, the basis of that was teaching people how to be assertive and how to have self-advocacy and legal rights and different things like that. And when we went to the training, one of the things that they made us do was stand up and do a whole session or part of the script. And it was extremely uncomfortable because it was not a typical part of our language. So fast forward, when I had my son, I just was naturally a great assertive person. I was able to convey my thoughts assertively and to talk to him like that. And as he got older, he used that against me quite often, which was kind of funny, because when I would go off on a tangent and he would say, Mom, I feel that, and I would want to just scream, but I was so proud that he did that. But again, it's a whole language change, and I can't stress that enough. All right. affective questioning, this is so helpful. If some of you have taken mindset training or some of the trainings for de-escalation, there's a lot of questioning and how you can de-escalate situations, but this is what restorative practices uses. And basically you can see this on the screen. You're asking when things go wrong, you're saying, you know, what happened? What were you thinking at the time? What have you thought about since? What has been affected by what you have done? In what way have you been effective, and what affected, and what do you think you need to do to make things right? When people are affected, you can ask them, what did you think when you realized what happened? You know, what impact has the incident had on you and others? What has been the hardest thing for you, and what do you think has happened to make things right? One of the greatest examples I think I've read was about a student who was in high school who traditionally had, you know, would blow up as soon as things didn't go her way, or, you know, she struggled in an area, and she happened to get a test back from her teacher, and the test she made, like, she failed it. And so she immediately tore it up and threw it down and ran out of the room. And before she did, she cursed the teacher and ran out of the room. This was a very restorative school. So the teacher just buzzed, you know, the front office, and the principal came out and said to her, because he knew the situation, he said, the first thing, I am so glad that you are so concerned about your grades, and that really frustrated you that you did not make a good grade on that. And the girl just broke down crying, and she said, I tried so hard, and, you know, so on and so forth. And they were able to have some dialogue. But then what happened is he went back and he said, okay, so who has been affected by what you have done? And she was able to say, the teacher. I didn't mean to go off on her. And because the teacher was restorative, she was able to go back and talk to the teacher, and they were able to work it out and help her think of better ways to handle that situation, those kind of situations. So affective questioning is powerful, and how you use it, you just have to think through. Now, this is a little formal, but again, it's going to come naturally as you practice it. All right, so let's talk about small impromptu conversations. That kind of lies on the continuum between the informal and the formal aspects of restorative practices, and is used to resolve low-level incidences that involve more than one person. And I just put some questions on here for you because I will be sharing this presentation with you. But this is a questioning technique that quickly resolves lower-level incidents involving 2 or more people. So I'm not going to read through that, but I will say that, again, it's all about using that language and being familiar with that language. And I'm going to stop for just a second because I want Dustin to read any comments or questions you might have in the chat box, and or if you want to give a shout out. All right, I think we're good. We're going to keep on rolling. All right, circles. Circles is somewhat what I demonstrated in the beginning is what we do. It is basically a versatile restorative practice that can be used proactively to develop relationships and build community, or reactively to respond to any wrongdoing or conflicts or problems. The circles actually give people an opportunity to speak and to listen to one another in an atmosphere of safety, decorum, and equality. And that is huge. So the idea is that you form a circle in your classroom, or again, like virtually, like we did. We're not necessarily in a circle setting, but you form a circle in your family or in your classroom. You have a speaking piece, and it could be anything that you want. I actually use a little stone rock that says inclusion on it, and it's carved into a heart, and that is my speaking piece. And so what we do is we start with, we model like on a scale from 1 to 10, how do you feel? And then we go, and then everybody gets an opportunity to speak. At the time that the person has the speaking piece, they're actually speaking, and you set the guidelines in the beginning. You tell the students that, once they have the speaking piece, they're the only one that's allowed to speak. And then whenever they're finished, they pass it on, and nobody else can interrupt or talk. And the funny thing about that is that we've done tons of training like this in the schools, and it is extremely hard for adults not to comment as soon as someone says something. And so it's really funny. But the reason why we, stress that the importance of silence and listening is because you really want to hear what the other person is saying, and that's the only way you really get out of what restorative practices is supposed to be put together for. So you pass the speaking piece around, and then everybody has the opportunity to speak and respond and be listened to. This is the part where you have to really think about your questioning. What is your end result when you're creating questions for your circle? What do you want that to be? And so it could be a circle for, again, just building relationships and building community. It could be a circle for academics. It could be where you're talking about a standard and you want their input in on it, or problem solving, and so you pass it around. So there are many different ways. There's many different strategies. There's one in particular with proactive is called a fishbowl, where you have someone in a group in the middle and the rest outside, and the group in the middle actually is talking about, the question is posed, and then there's an empty chair. That way anyone from the outer circle who is listening and paying attention can come in and offer some suggestions to that group for problem solving. So it's just a fun way to get everybody active in this. Now, let me say this about circles. This is not comfortable for every educator, and this is not, not every student is going to feel comfortable talking to, or talking to the group or in front of the group. So the important thing is to create an environment or an atmosphere of safety. And if they do not want to speak, give them the opportunity to say, I will pass. Because what you'll find out is after they've passed a while and they see everybody else being vulnerable and really answering, they'll feel more comfortable to answer as they go. So it definitely is, worth just really being patient and positive and listening. Responsive circles are, again, whenever there's some wrongdoing. Some of the stories that, have been shared about the responsive circles is when there is a conflict and you are running circles in your class, you're actually modeling and teaching your students how to, problem solve on their own. I know Calvin tells a story, which is really great. And I'm just going to briefly tell you that, he was doing restorative practices in a school, and the students were having some conflict, and the teacher actually saw them out it was a group of girls, and saw them out on the playground in a circle. And she went over and listened, and they were like, we were having a problem, so we decided to circle up. And so those kind of stories are really great, because there's so many different ways to learn to help the students problem solve, but just giving them one or two great strategies to be able to do that is just invaluable. All right, this is formal conferencing, and this goes more into the restorative justice piece of the continuum, and it is a structured meeting between offenders, victims, and both parties, family and friends, in which they deal with the consequences of the crime or wrongdoing and decide how best to repair them, or to repair the harm. I would highly suggest that you go to some of these YouTube videos on restorative justice and see if there's some really good examples, but then there's also not so good examples of that and how that works. But again, we use that more for the more serious offenders, and even in your schools, when you do that, it is very helpful for some of your students who are being habitually suspended, and it gets them to be part of their community. And I think when they know they're a part of the community and they know that you really have their best interest at heart, then they will be more apt to do better. And also the accountability piece to that is huge. So those are some things to keep in mind as you move forward. What will it take to have restorative practice climate? Bottom line, a love for children, a love for the people that you're around, a restorative staff using the restorative language, everybody talking the same language. How many, and this is actually a rhetorical question, but I want you to think about a time whenever you were able to calm down a student and you were, taking them back to class, and then you have a teacher or just some, adult in the building. Heck, I've even seen a janitor do it, say, "What have you done now?" And then set the student off again. And so it is super important that from the top down, that everybody uses the restorative language and the practices. And again, it's not comfortable. I can't stress that enough. Some of you, it might be comfortable. Like, I'm going to give a shout out to Terraport. Terraport's probably one of the most restorative people I know in her language, using her language skills. But typically it's not. And at the end of the day, what are we most worried about? We are most worried about, and I'm just going to say this, I'm going to say some of us might be a little bit different, but we're really worried about teaching our standards. Quite often our focus gets shifted to from the best of us. I mean, the best of us who really love students and go out and want the best for them and want them to, have everything. At the end of the day, when we are in that moment, is about really teaching those standards, because that's what we do. We're teachers. So it's going to take a lot of practice to create that restorative climate in your schools. This is really hard when it comes to adults. And for a lot of what I've seen across the board for a lot of educators is willingness to forgive and no grudges, willingness to be vulnerable and to be able to say, okay, this is how I feel, and to be heard. Short-term memory, start by working on adult relationships again. That just goes back to, you were harmed. Okay, if we can have that restorative conversation, you understand how I feel, and even though you may not accept that, that is something that we have to move forward with, and to have a great working relationship. Again, rhetorical question. Think of some teachers or administrators or family members that you do struggle with. You have a hard time working on those relationships because they're maybe their personality is strong and maybe judgmental, or doesn't kind of vibe with your vibe. And so how can you model being more restorative? Lindsay Lee, who is my special education research specialist, she has a 5-year-old or 6, I think she's 6 now, year-old daughter, and her daughter is beautiful, wonderful, but very strong willed and opinionated. And she has many meltdowns about certain things because she's somewhat of a perfectionist. And so Lindsay took these restorative questions and started, as mad as she was and frustrated as she was with her daughter, Birdie Joe, by the way, she was able to use this language and just put it into play with Birdie Joe. And it's quite funny to see now how she and her husband, and her husband is funny as all get out, but he is like super non-restorative, but he is actually using this language as well, and it is changing their household, which is pretty awesome. And now I see that the baby is more well adjusted, and she's more understanding of she's able to talk about how she feels, even if she doesn't know. Sometimes she just says, I don't know, Mama, I don't know what's going on. I feel, I don't know. And then being validated. And that is so powerful for our students, because like you, how many of you, whenever you go vent to your administrator or someone who is your boss, you feel so much better when they at least validate. They may not agree with what you're saying, but they validate that those are your feelings. And you're very blessed if you do have someone like that. But as a leader of your classrooms and as a leader of your district, it's important that you do that. Now, restorative is not so much about being, that touchy-feely, comfy, because there's plenty of people who are extremely restorative without having to hug. I'm a hugger. I'm so passionate about teachers and what they do on the front lines. And I love stories, but not everybody is like that. So I need you to really think deep within, how could you put into play some of these restorative practices that will be beneficial for you and your students and your family. So that's the question of the day, of how we are going to practice this as we move forward. All right. So, what do you think? I'm sorry. Why do you think it would be important for us as leaders to be intentional about being restorative? And then, what have you taken away from this session that you can start immediately? So, now I'm going to turn this back over to you. That was a lot of information. I hope I didn't talk too fast. But again, I'm going to share this with you. The biggest thing is hearing that your students matter, their voices matter, being validated matters, and that's the best way you're going to get full engagement from your students. So, why do you think it would be important for us as leaders to be intentional about being restorative? And what have you taken away from this session that you can start immediately? And, or, what are you currently doing that is very restorative and you found that it worked? Because I know that some of you on here are probably like, yeah, I totally use this. This is really great. And to add to, and that's what this is about, is making our community bigger and sharing. So having said that, I'm going to turn this back over to Dustin to let him facilitate if anybody would like to shout out or type in the box.
And if you'd like to come over the mic, you can go ahead and do that. I'll give you guys just a second for that. And if not, I will go ahead and start reading some. So feel free to come over the mic.
Hi, Kim. It's Deanne. Can you hear me?
Yes, Deanne. Hey, Deanne.
How are you?
Good.
I was one of those people eating my breakfast when y'all were doing introductions, but I was listening. I just wanted to go ahead and ask you to respond to a question. I had some ideas, but I figured you had this question before. Catherine Whitney had asked, what about students who are nonverbal as far as circles? And I just asked the question of her if they could, draw, read, write, but I didn't know if you had addressed this before as it relates to circles, I think is when she asked the question.
Right, right. Yes, and that's exactly right. So you want to create a way, you have to think about creating a way for them to be able to respond. It's kind of like that universal design of learning. When you have a Rubik's Cube, say everybody in the class has a Rubik's Cube and they're all full, we know what that looks like. It's all full of colors, but the colors and the manipulation would be hard for the students who can't visually see the colors or can't visually see. And then, so how would you address that? You might do a braille Rubik's Cube, but then again, that might not address the students who can't read braille or, can't manipulate the cube. So then you might look at a raised Rubik's Cube with shapes on it and, light colors. And so that might not work. So then you would have to go to a computer session. So again, it's just about looking at how best and being prepared for your students to address how they would feel more comfortable. So just little signs or, drawings or, already established ways that they communicate would be perfect. Good question.
We'll go ahead and read a few in the chat. We do have a couple. Terraport says selectively mute only in educational settings. I had that with ESOL student, but she had a best friend in my class. I had her whisper the answer to her friend, and then her answers were offered through that person. Later, I would check in with the speaker to determine if their peer was offering the answers so that I could keep up with them both informative strategies. Leslie Papel, I think it would be important to be intentional as a leader, would be to model and lead by example. Hopefully others will follow. Calvin Boone, it is important to be intentional because being restorative does not come natural to many of us. Rather, it requires mental and emotional conditioning on our part. Bottom line, train the brain in the way it should go, and the behavior is sure to follow. That's what we have.
Okay. Perfect. Anybody else want to? Oh, I see Jacqueline.
Jacqueline Watson, because so many adults do not share feelings, it is unwise to assume that students know how to do so. Our goal should be teaching students to cope in difficult situations as opposed to demanding compliance. Restorative practices are extremely important in education.
Yes, and so we go back to that modeling piece. You're right, and we talk about that a lot. You know, providing ways for them to express themselves. We do that a lot for students who have autism. We make social stories, and I cannot think of the and it left me, and how ashamed I am because I'm a sped teacher at heart. But the pictures, and that way they can say I feel sad or I feel happy. When they really can't communicate, and they learn really well. I mean, they start looking for those signs. So just as basic as that we do for them is what we have to do with our students who have a hard time. And yes, I agree that adults have a super hard time expressing themselves, and this is not like, not everybody is going to be able to jump in and be very restorative, and everybody's going to open up and it's going to be a powerful moment. I promise you it won't originally start like that. But adding, like everybody's saying, being intentional and adding what you can to the situation that is restorative. So I think we have a few more comments, Dustin.
Karen Ledford, it is difficult to practice restorative practices at home or at school when there is no follow-up in the home. And Kelly Otwell eliminates asking why. Students won't answer that, but completing a dialogue is much easier and eases the tension.
I see a couple more, Dustin.
Crystal Banks Holson, I'm going to try the strategy with holding an object with my daughter to help us avoid interrupting one another. Carl Pollack, I use this with special ed students all the time when they're having conflicts with regular ed teachers. Without losing discipline in class, I use restorative language to ease the tension in the classroom with the student.
Right, and I heard someone say that it is difficult when they're not doing it at home, and I completely get it. One of the facilitators that we had shared a story about a student who cussed all the time. He was a high school student, and he was just every other word, and he was like, "Stop! You have to stop!" And he was like, "I can't. It's just part of my language." He was always in trouble. So when he went and visited the family, it wasn't a bad, like, that's just how they spoke. They were like, "Oh, blank so and so, you're here. Oh, that's awesome." And so one of the things that came out of that was the facilitator. He said that he continued to model for that student, and the student was becoming more aware of what he was saying. So he would stop himself, and in the few years that he was there, he finally got much better at being using restorative language and not cussing, and being able to model that for his family. So it definitely was a win. You're not gonna change overnight, and just in the time you're with them, you just always model the expectations, and that can be challenging. What else do we have?
Marquise Jones, while I'm always using language as a school counselor, I think we'll have the teachers to implement these strategies with their students.
Okay, and I think Tara said something.
Yep, Terraport, the circle concept reminds me of responsive classroom meetings. I'm going to continue to be intentional in building those relationships. Thanks for all the great guidance, Kim.
Thank you, Tara. Like it is a concept of that. I think I have a couple of people who are wanting to give a shout out. So if you would do that, go ahead.
Hey, Kim, I just wanted to add that fortunately for me, y'all included me in one of your first trainings, and we actually used the circles, for our collaborative meetings for safe, healthy, and supportive schools. And one of the, I guess, benefits, or one of the ones I didn't count on, was the level of engagement from our participants, because in the past it was just a meeting and everybody could kind of sit on their computer and do their own thing. But once we started doing circles for certain parts of our meeting, everybody felt like they needed to, be totally engaged, and more people shared than ever because of us providing that environment. So I appreciate you including me and us in some of your training, and just wanted you to know that we have started using some of the circles, and it's just been amazing and beneficial. And thank you.
Oh, thank you, Deanne. Yeah, that's awesome. Again, if I hadn't have experienced this for myself in some of the hardest situations and being restorative, I would not be coming to you and saying, you know, how intentional and vital we have to be with how we handle our students and get it going. A lot of people have, you know, some of the barriers people say is, well, if we did this, we wouldn't have time to teach because then everybody would want to talk. But if you structure your circles in a way that it is very short but everybody has the opportunity to be heard, it is so much better to do a lot of that on the front end and give them those strategies. So throughout the year, they continue to grow academically because they know they're in a safe environment. So it's super important for that. All right. Did we have anything else besides? I think Leslie had to leave the meeting. I think we're good. Sarah Clark says, she has another meeting. Sorry. All right. So we're actually good for today. I know we're coming up on time. We went right to 10 o'clock.